Yeah. Welcome to Daddy Ball Mondays. Yeah. Welcome to Daddy Ball Mondays. Hey, welcome to Daddy Ball Mondays. What's happening with y'all, man? How y'all doing tonight, man? Want to welcome y'all to another episode of Daddy Ball Podcast. It's your boy, Real Coach Rule, with my boy, Veggie Hope. Man, we got to do a special guest today. Not nobody other than the greatest of all time debater in Black Boy Play Baseball group. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? MLB specialist, catcher specialist, Coach Carl Nichols, and hitting coach extraordinaire. You know what I'm saying?
right.
We had to go ahead and bring the guru in to bless all us good normal folks with outstanding knowledge.
All right.
Yeah, the man, the myth, the legend,
Yeah.
Carl Nichols. Want to thank you once again for joining the Daddy Ball podcast tonight, taking time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah.
We're honored and privileged to have you to be a part of our episode tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we are fresh off of the most terrible, trashiest All-Star weekend I have ever seen in my entire life. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what these folks got going on. I was complete. This is probably one of the first times I was completely uninterested with All-Star weekend. And I don't know if it was because it was on the West Coast. I've been trying to figure, like, man, am I just like uninterested in basketball? It's like they got these new rules going on. It's like I don't understand like what they doing. It's like I'm tuning in and I'm trying to catch up with what they, and it's like I can't even figure it out. It's like, is basketball dying?
Yeah. Well, I started watching basketball years ago. Once the basically there's no more big man and no more low post game, I became uninterested.
Yeah,
Right. So it doesn't surprise me that whatever was going on. I mean, I heard stuff. People didn't want to play and all that kind of stuff, which I don't understand, but that's just me. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I
times
think
have
that's
changed with the NBA,
yeah.
and what they're trying to do is make sure they're catching up with their users and the ratings. Right across all sports, they've changed the All Star formatting. If you look at football, they changed the format going from Honolulu. Now they're in Orlando. They're only doing the flag, right? Also, you see the difference that they're using in college football. College football used to be 4 teams in the playoffs. Now there's a 12-team system.
Yeah.
That's all around ratings, trying to identify and find the user where they are. They're no longer just tuning into TV. Now you have the social media aspect, so it's going vertical, going horizontal, it's going linear. So I think that's what the NBA is trying to do: adjust their ratings to their consumer base. I don't think nothing has changed in the fundamentals of it. But as you said, Coach Carl, there's no big man anymore. There's nobody posting up. Everybody's shooting long threes. So
so we just went to a game. Me and my son. I took my son to a Hawks game, and I was like, man, I was just ready to leave because the whole first half, all they did
Shooting
was
threes.
dribble down the three. They was just exchanging
Right.
threes, and I'm like, damn, there's nothing exciting about this. Like nobody is trying to create a
Right.
highlight. You know, it's like that's the weird part about it. It's like nobody's trying to create a highlight. And then I seen something on First Take. It was a hockey player. I think his name is PK Subban.
Yeah.
He kind of
yes,
said something that resonated with me. He's like, and I felt it. It was my first time hearing somebody actually like say it the exact right way, where he was just like, um, whoever the new players are, he was going at LeBron, but whoever the new players are, they don't remind me or give me the feeling of Michael
Right.
Jordan. They don't remind me or give me the feeling of Kobe Bryant. And it resonated with me because I feel like that's the reason why I'm not watching either. It's like he specifically said it too. He was like, man, these players, it's like they don't even have injuries. They just like have like little pain and then they sit
Yeah.
out. And it's like you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to play through pain. That's
right.
what, if I'm a fan, that's what I'm showing up for. I'm paying for a ticket to see you play through bumped and bruised and still give it all you got and still put up 30 points and triple double or whatever like
Well,
that. But like it's like Go
No, I was
ahead.
gonna say that's not how the modern athletes. That's not how they think anymore, right? Today's athletes are trained protect your money, right? So if
Yeah.
you feel any kind of pain, you can't get hurt because if you're hurt, you can't make any money. With the money they're paying, so any little thing, I got to sit out, make sure I'm 100% because I don't want to mess up this money. You mean we've all heard that saying, don't mess up your money. So
Right.
so that's really what it boils down to for me.
I can't like Jordan and Kobe. They didn't mess
Right.
up their money. They were the highest paid, and that's also what he said. He was like I don't care about if you play for 15 years or 20 years. I want your best
Right.
10. Like as a
Yeah.
fan, give me hard nosed bulldoze. I can beat you, everybody, every single night. Give me 10 years of that. You know what I'm saying? And I think that I think that there's a way that you can monetize that even more than trying to stretch out and spread it out for 20 years.
Yeah, you're right,
Right.
and I agree. But again, like I said, we're dealing with a new generation of athletes. Um, Joe DiMaggio from back in the 30s and 40s, after he had been in the league a while, somebody asked him, why do you still play so hard after all these years? And his response was, well, because there may be somebody in the stands who's seeing me play for the first time in person, right?
Right.
So I owe it to them to give 100%.
Yeah.
But again, too many athletes don't go by that anymore. Whether it be
Yeah.
all star, regular season, or whatever it is. So
Yeah, I just wish that somehow, some way, we could, you know, we got the ability to kind of like talk about things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. But I just wish there was like a way that more people would like talk about this and like, oh yeah, what's the problem with if you want to be a professional sports person, what's the problem with going after Hall of Fame? You know what I'm saying? What's the problem with going after immortality? You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like it's so funny because it's like you put a post into the group that you always cause arguments, but it generated a lot of
right,
conversation, and it kind of falls in the lines of what we're talking about, because it's like all the parents want for the kids, the parents want like this solution ahead of time. Like they're trying to figure out, okay, if I do this, then it's going to translate over to this, and
Right.
there's going to and this is the way that it's going to happen. And like for me, when I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm looking at the comments, I'm just like, it's got to be way more simple than this. Like, why not just like be like, oh yeah, challenge, you know what I'm saying? Can you be the
right.
best? You know what I'm saying? Like how can it be simple? But this is an excerpt of what you said. If you see me out somewhere with your baseball playing son and the conversation turns into your son's dream is I want to play in the big leagues, right? This is real specific, and I know you said this on purpose because parents are this specific. They're saying, how can I get my kid in the big
Right.
leagues? Like one of the most impossible Major League Baseball. It's not like
Right.
football. It's not like basketball. There are a lot more ways to get into professional football, especially and basketball, because there's a lot of in and out on the bottom side of
Right.
basketball and football. But baseball, you have the you might have the greatest players ever that never get a chance to step foot into the
Yep.
show. And so these parents, this is specific. It turns to your son's dream is I want to play in the big leagues, right? Okay, now you're asking me a big league question. So I'm going to ask you, right? Just know I'm going to start asking questions, the same questions scouts ask me when they call me. What's your 60 time? What's your velocity, etc.? You know what I'm saying? It's talking about as far as analytics. And you didn't really get I feel like when I was you didn't really get a chance to elaborate the way that you really wanted to on what you were really trying to say. So I wanted to invite you on so that you could really like elaborate on what that was, what you were talking about.
Yeah, so like I live in Atlanta, and I moved here from California about 5 years ago, whatever, well, 5 6 years ago, and so and even before I moved here, I was traveling across the country, coaching teams, watching players play, all that kind of stuff, and have been doing the same thing since I've been here. So I've met a lot of people from all over. I've taken kids to China, I've taken teams to Australia, Panama, all over the place. So, and what happened? And I've scouted a little bit with the Marlins, all that kind of stuff. So kids say all the time, because my question is, when I'm giving lessons, one of the first questions I ask is, what are you trying to do with baseball? Right? That was always my first question when I first worked with a kid. And usually they'll say, I want to get to the next level. That's the majority of the answers. And I said, well, what's the next level? What does that mean? High school, college, or what? And then because I make them be specific. And so when they say the big leagues, then I say, okay, so do you know what it takes to get to the big leagues? And I get these pat answers. I got to be good, or I need to hit, or I need to whatever. And so that's when I start breaking down the specifics of what it takes to be a big leaguer, right? And it's not being number 5 in your state at your position, that kind of stuff, right? When these MLB scouts come to these ball games, they're looking for something specific, right? And if you're not showing them that what they're looking for, they're not going to pay you any attention, right? Just a perfect example, I'll give you a story. When I was in California, I was at my buddy's son's high school game, and it was a high-profile school. And I'm standing behind home plate. I'm literally standing next to 7 scouts, MLB scouts, and then there were other scouts scattered around the field. But I'm literally standing next to 7 scouts, and we're talking. And one of the guys that I had known for a while, I knew most of them. And so we're watching the game. So after the game, a couple of scouts gave my buddy's son a information card to fill out for them. 2 days later, I'm hitting with my buddy's son and another kid on that team. That other kid, his dad says to me, I got to find another summer team for my son so I can get him some better exposure.
Wow.
And that was the response that I had. And I looked at the other kid's dad, and I said to the guy, I said, were you just at the game that I was at the other day?
Right, that's what I was just about to ask. Was he there?
There were
Yeah.
I was standing next to 7 scouts that saw your son play. Right? Your son didn't get a card because he didn't have anything. He wasn't showing anything that they wanted to see.
Right.
And this guy, I mean, he literally started crying. Was about to start crying. Right? So, but basically what I was explaining to him is, and it wasn't that the kid couldn't play, but he was just a little bit short on everything. He was a shortstop, but he was a little bit slow. Arm wasn't all that great, and his bat wasn't all that strong as far as how hard he hits the ball. He was executing, helping the team win, that kind of stuff, but he wasn't showing what he needed to play at the next level, right? And I had been on him even before that. Make your son switch hit, get him a speed coach so he can get faster. But he never
Right.
did it. All he talked about is finding a team so my son can get exposure. Right, and I just had to tell him the hard truth, because if I don't tell you the hard truth, you're going to continue with this fantasy that thinking that if you just go to a certain place, somebody's going to draft you, and that's not how it works, right? And these scouts, as harsh as people think I am, the scouts are worse, because that's why I do it, because they don't show any mercy. Their jobs are on the line, right? They're not going to. I don't care how much they say they like you, they're not going to draft you. And then you go out there and look like crap, and then people start questioning their job, right?
Yeah.
And so they're not going to draft you as a favor. They're going to draft you because your mom looks good, or none of that stuff, right? You have to show them on the field and off the field that you are ready for that next level. And it's even more crucial now because there's only 20 rounds, and I think there's 20 or 30% less minor league teams. Right, so there's not a whole lot of time or opportunity for development once you do get there, right? So they're going right in today's game draft. They're looking for players who are as close to the big leagues as possible. That's why they're drafting more college players now versus high school players, right? So if you're not a super stud in high school, you're not getting drafted. I don't care if you're all state. I don't care where you're ranked at with perfect game and PBR. If your tools aren't off the charts, you're not going to get drafted, right? Now that's not to say you can't get there, but you have to work, and start relying on perfect game and all these other people telling you that you're good, right?
Right.
Instead of going out and making yourself good, make it so that there's no question that you should be selected in the draft if that's your dream to get drafted.
Yeah, you got to be butt naked.
Right.
That was my Lord. That's what I say,
Right.
man.
One of
You
the
got to
things
be.
you mentioned, Coach Carl, was the tools. So, what is some of the things that aspiring players they want to get to the next level? That next level is going to be specific to each player. I want to go from my middle school team to my high school team, high school to JUCO or D1, D1 to the MLB.
Right.
Can you elaborate on some of the things that a scout is looking for that makes it where that particular player is projectable? Okay, whether that's your exit velocity while batting, whether it's your infield velocity thrown across the diamond, your outfield
Yeah.
velocity, your 60 time. Can you elaborate on some of those
Oh yeah.
tools
So
that to help out our viewing audience?
it's simple and complicated at the same time, right? So as a scout, you know, first thing the scout looks for is, does he pass the eye test,
Right.
right? So an example, when I was in California, I worked at the Urban Youth Academy in Compton. If I worked there for 6 years when they opened, and the Andre Dawson Classic, or that they just played down in Florida, that started. We
And
started.
Vero.
I think it was either that one or the Cactus Jack. Don't remember which one, but we started that in California, right? So the very first one that was played, it was Southern, Bethune-Cookman, UCLA, and USC,
Right.
and the game was televised on Baseball Network. So USC was playing one of the schools, Bethune, I think it was, and the head coach, who was Chad Kruder, who played 15 years in the big leagues, got kicked out early in the game. So we're sitting in the conference room and watching the game on TV, and Chad Kruder is telling us all his big league stories, right? Like big leaguers like to do. And the conference room has a big picture window right in the front where the gate where everybody comes in, so we can see everybody that's coming in the gate. So during the game, there are kids coming in to work out on the other fields. So Chad's in the middle of his story, and this one kid walks in. He stops in the middle of his story. He said, "Who is that kid right there? I'll give him a scholarship right now,"
Wow.
just based on the way he looked.
I
Eye
test him.
I
test.
tell.
The eye
That's
test.
Now
fire. That's
that
fire.
kid ended up playing in the big leagues. He's still in the big leagues right now, right?
That's fire.
Right now,
Yeah.
he knew nothing about the kid. He just know he liked what he saw. So, and that happens all the time. So when scouts do that, now they follow up to see if the game matches the look.
Hmm.
I'm sorry. I got to say something
Okay.
real quick, right? Because this is funny. Because there was for the past couple days, there's been a tirade, right, on supporting this event,
Right.
right? Okay, so this is tricky right here because the story that you just now told, an opportunity was given to someone because they were in the right place at the right
Right.
time. So piggybacking off of what LT what Veggie just said, I'm saying I'm thinking to myself now, like, okay, all the analytics matter, but when I'm looking at the conversations and what people are saying back and forth, you got to factor in being at the right place at the right time. You got to figure some of that out too.
Well, yeah, you want to be at the right place at the right time, but again, you have to be ready.
Yeah, of course you got to be ready. You
So,
you need
and
all the other tools. Okay, so
Nice.
I don't know the specifics about this
Yeah.
story, but and you know the very much so you know the specifics of this story. So the general story that I know is that what I'm saying, Tamar Johnson, he's from Atlanta. What I'm saying, nobody really knows who he is, even though he's balling out in Atlanta. He's not really like, oh yeah, like you said, a top five, whatever in his class player ranking or whatever like that. But then he goes down. What was it? Tampa? Was it Tampa?
At you talking about the PG Nationals?
Where he did the beat, where he was doing BP and he was hitting balls out of the MLB park.
Oh,
Was
that
that
was
in
no.
Tampa or was
You're
that
talking about
Miami?
Colorado.
Yeah.
Oh, it was in
At the home,
Colorado.
he did the home run derby, high school home run derby in Colorado. Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
Okay. So and that was the his coming of age, like, oh, I'm stepping onto the stage, and that's what kind of propelled him and
Well,
projected him
he
up.
was he no he was before that. So I think I know where you're going with that. He was always a prospect, but because of his size, So the way what scouts do is once they identify you as a prospect, they look for every reason not to draft you or not to give you money or try to come up with every reason that you're not going to make it. They try to poke holes in your game, basically, right?
Right.
So and because of his size, people had their doubts or whatever. So I guess you can say his where he put everybody's doubts to bed was at the PG Nationals in Tampa at the Tropicana, whatever the name of the stadium is.
Right. I think
Now
that's
the
what I'm
funny
talking
part
about. Yeah.
about this story is he wasn't going to go because he had been playing so much baseball up until that point. He wanted to just stay home and rest, and his mother told him, "No, you need to go. Stay with your commitment or whatever." So he go he
Good job,
so he
bro.
went and he ends up hitting a home run off a lefty throwing 94, 95 or something. And once he did that, everybody they stopped doubting him basically, right? And realized he was the real deal. So but getting back to Veggie's original question about the tools, right? So there's 5 tools, and there's a grading scale for scouts, 20 to 80 or 2 to 8, however you want to look at it, with 80 being the best, and obviously 2 is the worst. The major league average is 50 to 55, right? So they grade you on your tools, running speed, hitting ability for average, hitting for power, arm, and your defense, right? So in order to get drafted, so what I simplify it for people. In order to get drafted, you got to be able to do 3 things, and those things that you do, you better be able to do them really well. You got to be able to score runs, drive in runs, or prevent runs, right? And the better your tools are, the better you're going to be able to do those, either one or all 3 of those things, right? So the tools, some of the tools have more priority than others based on the position that you play, right? So if you're playing shortstop, second base, center field, right? You better have some speed. You better be a 6'5" runner if you're playing one of those 3 positions. You better
Right.
you better have a decent glove, right? And it used to be, you didn't have to hit as much, but that's not true anymore. You got to hit at every position now in today's game, right? But you got to be able to run at least to get drafted, and you got to have a really good glove. If you're playing one of the corner positions, as a scout friend of mine used to say, you better be able to move the ball. Meaning you be able to hit those gaps. You got to be able to drive in that run from first base consistently,
Right.
right? And so for a high school player, when they're looking for hitters, especially the corner guys, they're looking for power potential, right? You don't necessarily have to be hitting home runs right now in high school, although the more you hit, the more money you're going to get in your bonus. But if there is a way that they look for, they can tell that a guy's going to have some power, and basically it's how many doubles that they're hitting in the gaps, right? Because as a high school players, you figure by the time he's 21, 22, 23, he's going to put on another 15, 20 pounds of muscle, right? So those balls he's hitting to the gap that are short hopping the fence are going to carry another 15, 20 feet by the time he's 21, 22. right? So that's how they can project a guy that's going to be a power hitter, even though he's not hitting home runs right now. And a perfect example of that is Cody Bellinger, right?
Right.
I don't know who he's with now. I think he's with the Yankees or somebody, but he had one home run in 4 years of high school, right? But he was 6'4", 170 pounds, and he was hitting a lot of balls in the gap for doubles and triples. So they knew, once we put 20 pounds of muscle on him, those doubles and triples turn into home runs, which is what happens, right? So, but basically, especially as a high school player, you got to have plus tools. Or so a major league average, as far as the scale goes, is 50 to 55. That's a major league average, right? So you need to have at least one tool that's 60 or greater on the grading scale, right? And I can use myself as an example. All my tools were pretty average, except for my arm. My arm was probably 70 to 80 on the scale, right? So, and I was a shortstop in high school, but I knew I wasn't going to play shortstop at the next level because I just wasn't fast enough. Even though I moved pretty good, but I just didn't have the speed.
I like that. I
And
like
I knew
that.
I wasn't going to be a shortstop. But I only played shortstop because we didn't have anybody else at the time. But I knew my future was as a catcher, right? Because of my arm,
Right.
right? Now, so look, as a catcher, I literally could shut down the team's running game from behind the plate. And that's how I was able to impact the game, right? I played with some center fielders, could take away hits like crazy and dominate a game with their glove or their legs. Or you watch a guy like Ozzie Smith, just getting balls all over the field, right? So it's those type of things that get scouts' attention, right? Or you got a guy uh, like Elijah Green who can hits the ball out of sight, right? Those are the things that are going to get you drafted, not somebody who's hit a bunch of home runs at 12U, right? And then you don't hit another home run until your senior year in high school. Not that that's a bad,
Yeah.
So
not
so
that that's a bad thing,
so
but
so now that you said that, because okay, so I noticed that you travel overseas a lot. You
mm,
go to Dominican a
yeah,
lot,
yeah,
right? So specifically when it comes down to youth sports,
yeah,
right? Because you see a lot of people in youth sports try to focus in on what they're doing in DR or whatever that
right,
is. First of all, they got a different time management
right.
than we do because
School,
their age is 16, ours is pretty much 18. So they got a 2-year head start. But the word that you used earlier was
yeah,
development,
right.
right? When it comes down to development, what is the major difference between the mentality in youth sports in America versus from a developmental standpoint versus the mentality of the I don't even know what they call it in Dominican, but whatever that phase is going into 16, what is the difference, the major difference for to you that makes these kids project so much faster than the kids in America?
Well, so in Dominican, and everybody thinks they have an advantage or whatever. And in some areas they do, in other areas they have a disadvantage. But in the Dominican or in Latin America, period, they basically have to sign by the time they're 16, right? So they start 11, 12 years old, lifting weights, running. So the last time I was there, I went to a couple of academies, and I think we got there like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm thinking I'm going to see them warm up and get good ready. When I got there, the kids were already in the field in a full sweat at 7:30 in the morning,
That's strong.
right? And they're out there all day. If they're either on the field or in the weight room, right? So,
Right.
so by the time they're 16, their bodies look like grown men. That's why they look the way they look because they start early and more often with the weightlifting. Now our kids eventually get to catch up when they go to college or eventually pro ball, but they have to do that because if they don't develop by the time they're 16, they get kicked out of the academy because there's two different academies in Dominican. There's the Major League academies, which all the teams have That's where the players that have signed go to. Then there's the amateur academies. And this is where the players get signed from, right? And it's free for the kids, but the way they are able to pay for everything is they take a percentage of the kid's signing bonus, right? So if a kid doesn't sign by the time he's 16, then he's basically just stealing money from the academy. So they get rid of him, bring in another kid. And now this is bad for kids who are late bloomers, right? Because when last time I was down there, the guy was showing me some video. There's literally 18, 19, 20-year olds down there who throw 90 plus and just walk in the streets because they didn't get signed when they were 16, and then when they left, they had this growth spurt at 17, 18, but it was too late by then,
Right.
right? So it's almost a necessity that they have to work sooner and harder because they have to be ready by the time they're 16. And it's just the way the culture is set up. It's not necessarily they work harder than our kids. They just work different than our kids because the way they don't go to school, they don't go to college if they don't get drafted, right? So if they don't sign at 16, they got to go find a job.
So that's what my that's I think that's what if I had a follow-up question, that's what it would be. Do they play like we play? I feel like in America we play a lot of
Yeah,
baseball tournaments,
yeah.
right? Do they play a lot of like do they play baseball that way?
No, they basically they'll play. It's kind of like we did in Little League, but they'll play other academies. They schedule games or schedule weekend games against other academies. But again, they're not really playing for any kind of prize. They're just playing because they need to play. They need to see where they're at, and that kind of thing.
That's what I was waiting on right
Yeah,
there.
Mhm.
Because that's the key to me. That's the key integral part about
right.
development, right? Is that you're supposed to be using the
To see
game
where you
to see where
to
you're at,
measure, yeah,
Mhm.
measure where your development.
so that you can go and make yourself better during the week
And
or whatever the couple of
right,
weeks before your next game. But to me, in America, this is just my opinion. There's so much focus on winning that as soon as you it's like you don't even have the opportunity as a kid to see where you're at. You have to be bulletproof.
right. So yeah, because it's here. It's for everybody. The bottom line is money. For
Mhm.
the tournament host, it's about money. The teams that are going to the tournament, it's about money, right? So me, as if I'm running a team, in order for me to get you to pay me your money, right, I gotta put out the image that we're winning all the time, right? Because American parents, we got this mentality that we have to win games in order to be good or in order to get better, right? And which is part of the reason why I don't coach a whole lot because when I coach, I'm trying to develop. I can care less about whether we win the game or not. But these parents, they
Right.
lose their mind when if they don't see me. If a kid, maybe a pitcher is struggling a little bit, and I don't go pull him right away. I leave him out there, let him try to figure it out for a while,
Yeah, just
right? Before I go and either try to help him or I pull him, right? But you can't do that with some of these parents because they think you're not trying to win, and they go run to another team, right? Instead of
Yeah.
just letting because it's easy to play when you're kicking everybody's butt. That's not what makes you better. You gotta get your butt kicked, right? So you know how to deal with that. Because I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are. At some point, you're gonna run into some adversity, right? And
Mhm.
the players who deal with the adversity the best are the ones who have the most success, right? Because
Yeah.
and so that's one of the reasons why I don't coach as much as I probably should be coaching because of that reason. Because I treat when I'm during the games, I treat the field or my team like a classroom, right? So if you think about your son at school, if he's struggling with a problem, your teacher doesn't kick him out of class and bring somebody else in to do his work, right? And if he's struggling with a problem, you go over and help him. Show him where he's messing up on his problem so he can correct it. And that's what I try to do on the field. Make an error. I'm not going to yell at you for making an error. If I can help you, I'm gonna say, well, this is what you did. Try this next time, right? And that's how that for me. That's how you develop the kids and make them better. Versus, if they make a couple of errors, you get them out of there, then you put somebody else, and that's not helping them, right? And most of us as coaches, we do that because we don't know how to help a kid, right?
Right.
If he's struggling with that bat, we don't know how to get him out of a slump. So what do? We go find another hitter to hit for him.
Yeah.
Instead of allowing him to figure it out. And that's the other thing too with that is, in my opinion, I think we start too early with the hitting instruction. You know, I think you should let up until probably 11, 12, 13 years old, let the kids figure things out for themselves, right? Because if you just start them out right away giving instruction, they won't try anything unless you tell them to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of going in here, this didn't work. Let me see if I can try this, right? And they start to learn their bodies. They understand about making adjustments, and on top of that, they're growing every day. So what you tell a kid to do at 8 years old, in 3 months, 6 months, his body's gonna be totally different, right? But he won't change unless you give him the freedom to change, to make the
Right.
adjustments that his bodies are making. For example, he's down in Chipola right now, Sam Parker. When I first started working with Sam, he was 5'10". Within 8 months of me starting to work with him, he was 6'3". Right, and I literally had to tell him, okay, you got to stop thinking like a 5'10" guy. You're not 5'10" anymore. Go up to the plate and start thinking like a guy that's 6'3". Right? Now he wouldn't do that on his own because he's never been allowed the freedom to think like that. Right? So you gotta allow the kids to figure some things out on their own, and then once they start getting the instruction, then they can implement it and make it suit their style and their body types. Versus trying to give everybody the same well, you give them the same information, but you got to be flexible to allow them to interpret it how it best suits them.
One of the things that you talked about was the overarching theme we're talking about is development of the player.
Right.
But there's also another aspect where we brought in the parental side and a term that people always use, FOMO, fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
How do you balance development with the fear of missing out? Because one of the story that you mentioned about the team in California was the one player did not receive a information
Right.
card. So his guardian slash parent automatically thought that he was missing out. So he needed to go to another opportunity, another team that's going to give more exposure when 25% of the MLB was at his game,
Right.
right? So he think he's missing out.
Right.
So how would you encapsulate development with the fear of missing out, allowing the player to understand who they are and what they could bring to their aspect of the game?
Well, the first thing is, again, kids, parents who are players, they have to really truly understand what it takes to be a professional baseball player. If you don't understand what
Right.
it takes to be a professional baseball player, then you don't know what you're working for or working towards. Right. So that's why in that post I said what I said. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, because the worst thing I can do is not say anything and just allow you to go on doing what you're doing, and then you come back later saying, well, why didn't you tell me? Or why no? How come nobody ever told me that I had to do this? Right? You can be mad at me all you want, but you're never going to come back to me and say, why didn't you tell me? Right? Because I'm
Right.
going to tell you how it is. Right? Uh, so they have to first understand what it takes to get to that level, which most people don't understand. And I try to tell them what it takes. And then once you understand what it takes, then you start working. If you're lacking, you start working towards it. And again, I give you a perfect example with Sam Parker, same guy. So how I got to working with Sam, and I had seen him around town. Actually, I met him in Houston at a tournament. Always, he was always getting hits, right? And he posted one of his swings in a game on Instagram, whatever it was, and I made a comment on it. And basically, I said, nobody's coming to watch you hit singles. That was my comment on his post, right? he got pissed off about it. Right. But instead of tucking his tail and running, he told his mom, "Okay, get in touch with him, find out what he's talking about. I want to see what
Right.
he's talking about." Right. So they ended up contacting me, and we go hit. I go hit with him, and I told him, I said, "Look, you're 6'3" now, right? And you're first baseman, you're a corner guy. You're not going to get drafted hitting singles. I don't care if you hit
Mm-hmm.
500 in high school. Okay, I say you got to start hitting the ball out of the ballpark if you want people to come see you, right? Because and at that time he had a scholarship to Georgia State as a pitcher,
Okay.
as a pitcher, right? So I worked with him. It was a Sunday. That Tuesday he hit his first home run, right?
Wow.
Right.
That's fire.
So he starts hitting home runs. Now all of a sudden, all these scouts come watching him as a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so his senior year, he would have these workouts where he would invite scouts to come watch him hit before his games. And there was this one scout, and one particular scout, he was thanking the scouts for coming. And when he thanked this one scout, the scout said, "Oh, I've been watching you for 2 years," right? And Sam, his mouth dropped because he had never met the guy before. So
Right.
what he didn't understand was he had the look, but he wasn't doing what the scout was looking for up until that point. He's been watching him, but he just never approached him because he wasn't, he hadn't developed into the hitter that he thought he should have been. Right? He said, "I've been watching you for 2 years, waiting for him to develop into the hitter that he ended up being." So he went, and then he got caught up in all the rankings and all that stuff. All these guys. He was like the number 15 first baseman in the state or something. And I told him, that stuff means nothing. So all those guys almost all those guys that were in the top 10 in the state and ahead of him, none of those guys got drafted, and he got drafted out of high school.
Wow.
Right? And he was again, at one point he was on nobody's radar, or at least he thought he wasn't. But once he developed his swing to where it was it matched to what the scouts were looking for, then they made themselves known to him. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I laugh at all these parents who say I need to get my son seen, and I say all the time, the scouts have seen your son, right? You're just not showing them what they're looking for. Once you start showing what they're looking for, they'll make themselves known to you. I sit in the stands and talk to them all the time. They see everybody, right? They see kids that they like, but he's just not ready yet.
Okay.
He needs to go to college, or he needs to go to JUCO, or he needs to get faster, right? So when I'm really relaying these messages to these parents or kids, this is what I'm hearing from the scouts, right? And just not probably a month ago, no, it was back in the fall. My phone rings, and it's a scout friend of mine from California, and he's at the ballpark. He said, "Hey, I just saw this kid, and I looked on the school's roster. I see he's from Atlanta, Georgia. You know anything about him?" And when he told me his name, of course, I knew who he was, and I seen him play. I never coached him, but I seen him and I knew what his story was. Right now, he didn't ask me if he could play or not because he could see he could play. He asked me what kind of kid he was.
Mm.
That's all he asked
That's
me. What's
fire.
his story? That's what he said.
Right.
Right. So, so these parents or people who think their kids aren't being seen, your kids are being seen. I don't care if you're on the main field, or if you're on the backfield. Your kids are being seen, right? If you want to get the attention of the scouts, then you have to show them something worthy of them, because they don't have time to approach everybody that they see, right? They would
Right.
never get through their day. They only approach the guys who, the possibility they may be drafted, right? And
I think you said that in one of your recent comments too. You said something to the extent of when you it's a difference between knowing how to play the game, because if you're on the baseball field and you're in certain type of tournaments, everybody on the team is good at
right,
baseball,
right,
right? But there's a difference between being good at baseball and showing a scout what they want to see. There's a difference between those two things. Like you could be a really, really good baseball player and help your team win a lot of games or championships, or be on a really good team, and that be a championship team. But that doesn't translate over to the conversation of, do you have the tool set that they're looking
right.
for?
Yeah, I mean, again, the very first perfect game tournament I coached in, I brought a team out here to Atlanta from California, and and the kids that had on my team had never played in Perfect Game tournament. So Perfect Game didn't know who they were. Nobody knew who they were. And when we got here, we were reading the Perfect Game website. They on the website they said that as a team from Louisiana, they were going to go undefeated and win the tournament. This was a 17U tournament. That's what Perfect Game said on their website. They're going to go undefeated, right? So we got into the tournament late. So I'm a, my guess is because we got in late, I guess they call themselves punishing us, and they put us up against this number one team,
Right.
right? So not only did we beat the team, we embarrassed them. Right, we hit
Fire.
like five home runs against them, and it was just got crazy. So off that team, now we didn't, and we literally didn't win another game the rest of the tournament, and mostly because most of the guys had to go back to California. Our better players had to go for the area code tryouts, so that's why we didn't win the game. But off that team that I had I think 8 guys get drafted with I think 4 of them were first rounders,
That's
but
fire.
nobody knew who they were when they first got there, right? Now, by the time we finished playing, everybody was watching. And that was the only game we played at East Cobb. All the rest of our games were, you know, 30, 45 minutes.
Everywhere else.
But those scouts followed us to every field, trying to see who are these guys that they just saw whoop up on the number one team,
Right.
right? So, yeah, so you can have good teams or even be a good player, but are you the player that they're looking for? Are you not only an elite athlete, but are you an elite player,
Hmm.
right? Which is what.
Yeah. And so that's the balance, right? Because there's actually a mirror of this that's going on in the in the game, like on the headlines right now. So because baseball has this interesting dynamic, right? Because it's not like a super team sport like football or basketball where you're dependent on what your teammate is
Right.
doing,
Right.
right? Where you have to be a star if you want to be noticed as an individual, and by doing that if you're helping your team
Right.
out as far as like baseball
Right.
goes, and trying to figure out that balance is like they're the media is barbecuing Devers right now because he's like, I'm the best. I'm the best. Proved that I'm the best hitter. You guys are paying me $300+ million, 100+ million dollars, and I proved that I'm the best hitter. And I'm playing third base, and then everybody's, oh, he's not a team player. Woo, 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 woo. Like, so how do you when you get to that point, like, how do you figure out as a parent that's trying to develop your kid, how do you figure out how to explain that part of the conversation where because baseball is like a individual team type sport?
I mean, there's selfish people in all walks of society. I don't know Devers, so I don't know his reasoning behind why he doesn't want to move. My guess is because he's so bad defensively, he's afraid to try another position. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Could be it. That could
Just
be
guessing.
it.
But this is a part of the game where the money has taken over, right? Because you know even back when I was playing, somebody told you to change position. You're like, okay, because you're the coach. It's your team. I got to do what you say. If I didn't do what you say, somebody else would be here. Well, because the guys are making so much money, they know they're not going anywhere. So he's able to say that. But I think ultimately he will move, or he's going to have to move. Uh, but I think it's a combination of maybe a little selfishness and the amount of money these guys are making that they're able to say those type of things. Again, it doesn't compute in my brain because I was just happy to be on the field no matter what position I play. And that's the other thing too is that's why you need to teach your kid to play as many positions as possible, right? Because Robinson Cano, everybody knows him, right? If he had that attitude, he never would have played in the big leagues, right? Because most people don't realize Robinson Cano was a shortstop
Right.
with the Yankees, but they already had Derek Jeter. So they was like, okay, if you want to play in the big leagues, you got to move to second base. And he said, okay, no problem. right? And there's a lot of guys like that. If they didn't change positions, they wouldn't be in the big leagues. So, again, this.
I got a question for you before we get you out of here. As a former MLB player for many
Mhm.
years, former coach, former scout, what kind of advice would you impart to parents? Ruben and I both have young sons. The things that we need to focus on or be concerned with at a young age before we start taking the next steps. The next steps would be middle school, high
Yeah,
school, college, and so on.
good question. Um, the number one thing, which I think both you guys are doing a good job of, is got to keep it fun for them, right? Because
Mm,
at some point it's going to feel like a job. Even before they start getting paid, it's going to start feeling like a job. And every
right.
every 100% of baseball players, if they play long enough, they go through some adversity. And a lot of guys have quit and maybe didn't get to their goals because they quit on themselves too soon and because they couldn't deal with the adversity. Only thing that's going to get you through that adversity is your love for the game,
Okay.
right? So you have to make sure you're instilling that love for the game. Even you're working out and you're teaching him work ethic, which is great, right? But make sure you're having fun with it. That he's enjoying
Mm,
being with you because for baseball and for boys, their love from the game is directly related to their relationship with their dads,
Mhm.
okay.
right? All the guys that I've run into who have had issues with baseball had issues with their dad,
Mm,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
That's deep.
So
That's
okay.
deep.
if you got a really good, and not just, it could be any male figure that they look up to.
Right.
We're
Right. Right.
saying dad. This is daddy ball.
Yeah.
And
I mean, but yeah, that about.
right,
Yeah.
and that's not a bad terminology either. Most people like to put it, but I learned this.
Oh no, that's why we started doing this because you know what I'm saying we wanted to. There's I think people just always focus on the
Right,
negative aspect of it. You know what I'm saying? Like so for me, when we first released that, like my definition of daddy ball is making sure that you are doing your
right,
progression. You know what I'm saying? It's like when that was one of the best blessings that I had. Me not being a baseball person, me being a football person, and making it to a high level in
yeah,
football, and bringing Deuce to
right,
you and sitting down because you weren't. That's the best part about me when I came to a lesson with you. You weren't coaching him, you were coaching the
right,
parent
right,
too. You see what I'm saying? So I heard the things that you were saying, it resonated because you saying the same thing that you said to the people right now. You said it to
right,
me, which was, "Hey, listen, right now he's gonna forget
Mhm.
more than he
Yeah.
remembers. You can't get
Right.
frustrated. You gotta let him
right,
develop. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Because now even for me, it frustrates because I got that energy in me now. It frustrates when we go to a team and they're wanting to win, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. There's too many people on a professional level that have told me
yeah,
that this is more important. You know what I'm saying? And so you can't get mad at me because I'm like, wait a minute, hold on.
Mhm.
I don't want to go this route. I want to
Right.
development, and I want to make sure that we're having fun, and I want to make sure that you're understanding what you have going on and you're preparing yourself not for this tournament that's coming up this weekend or 11U or 12U or whatever, that you're preparing yourself for high school
college,
and making an
yeah,
impact to get yourself into college. And while I'm saying college, you can't just say college because without
right,
grades. And that's the other thing that I had to take a step back and do and say, hold on a second. I checked myself. I said, wait a minute, hold on. I'm spending all this money on training sessions. I'm not putting this same energy into
academics,
paying for
right,
tutors.
right,
Mhm.
So I took a step back, even myself, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm fixing to take my whole training, trainers, pitching trainer, hitting, I'm finna take that whole budget and I'm going to direct it straight to tutors for a whole 6 months,
Right.
right? And I didn't go to any football, no training sessions, baseball, nothing. and I just did academic tutoring for six
Yep.
months. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm s- there's no way that you can make it to that college. College is not letting you in. This ain't the
Yeah.
program. You know, they're not letting you in, you know, without the
Right.
grades, especially with baseball. Well, now it's going to change because baseball's got full scholarships. But when baseball was busting down scholarships, you had to be able to bring something to the table
Right.
academically in order to get into that
Yep.
school. And so just having those conversations gave me, as a daddy ball guy, the confidence to say, you know what, I gotta have faith in my program and my process and what I know as a professional to also protect my kid moving forward, because going into a getting into an ambitious program with an ambitious coach, like how you were saying, you said it specifically, and there's so many guys that just popped into my head when you said that, when you said, oh, he doesn't really know how to coach, so what is he going to do? He If a kid starts struggling, the first thing that he thinks to do is replace him,
Right.
Right.
instead of, oh, how can I talk to this kid, or what things can we
And
do so we can get the
that's
most out of
that's
this kid?
especially true with our kids because they don't understand how our kids think and the culture and all that kind of stuff. You know, because I was misunderstood because of my personality. I was quiet. I didn't talk a whole lot. So a lot of the coaches, I'm talking about professional coaches, thought I didn't like playing baseball just because I
Mhm.
minded my own business, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. With
No, hell no, I never heard nobody. I feel it inside of my heart, because we pull up to the park and we obviously see what baseball looks
yeah,
like. So for me, you know what I'm saying, I went to a high school that was like that at football, but no, we got a little bit of time. What does that look like from our culture standpoint? Like,
so
I want
yeah,
you, like, for you to
so
elaborate on that.
football and basketball, majority of the players are black. So if you want to be
Mhm.
successful as a coach, right, you have to adjust to black culture if you want to get that player to come play for you. Baseball coaches don't have to do that, right? So you either
Wow.
if you're going to play for that coach, you either assimilate or you're going to have problems, right? So again, for me, and because I was quiet, especially the darker your skin is, right? I was a quiet person, especially around the coaches, and again, so they just assume, that I was aloof. I didn't like baseball, all that kind of stuff, and then the way that I played, especially defensively, a lot of times they thought I was kind of lazy because I made things look too easy sometimes, right? Or people, players who had swag, that they would label them just negative stuff all the time, right? And
Yeah.
so again, especially at the professional level, when they start doing that, they just replace you, right?
Hmm.
And so I would,
See, now I get it. You've said this so many times. I never really understood, and people get mad at you for saying it. That makes sense. I'm glad that we brought you on, because
yeah,
what you just now said, it makes sense, because you're trying to say, be careful with how you present yourself, because one thing that you always hone in on is like Crocs and stuff like that, and flip-flops and stuff like that. And so people are getting would get upset with
right.
you, because you're saying, you're basically, they feel like you're saying, oh yeah, you can't be
Can't be
black,
yourself, right?
right? But no, but what you're saying really is that you, why give them an
Right.
excuse to
Correct.
eliminate
Correct.
you? They are, because you said it earlier, they trying to poke holes
Right.
in your game
And then they
anyway.
will look for any excuse they can to not give you the money. And I'm talking about the
Yeah.
draft, right? And they will get petty with it, right? And then it's not stuff that I'm making up that I'm getting my feelings about. This is stuff that I'm hearing from these guys. I
Hmm.
was at USA Baseball with a USA Baseball coach. Kids in the stand, they're done playing, and they're just walking around the stadium, got his Crocs on. He elbows me. Look at that shit right there. Excuse my language, but talking about his Crocs.
No, it's all
He's
good.
talking about his Crocs. All right,
Right.
and I'm like, kid hasn't played for the last 2 3 hours. Why are you? I didn't say that, but that's what I'm thinking. Why are you focused on his
Hmm.
Crocs? But that's what they do. right? And so I just really relay that message to our kids. I know you want to be swagged out and all that stuff, but it's still their game. And
Yeah.
basically, in order to get what you want, you have to give them what they want, right?
Hmm.
Without demeaning yourself, right?
Yeah.
So other things I talk about with kids when they're getting ready to go to college, off to college, or play pro ball, I try to teach them how to play the game with the coaches, right?
Hmm.
So there's a couple of things. One is you want to get in good with the person, the decision maker, right? You don't have to have long conversations with them or kiss their butts or whatever. Just go to the coach every once in a while and have them talk about themselves, right? Just say, "Hey, coach, what did you used to do when you played? How did you hold the bat or something like that?" Just get them talking about themselves, right? And once they start talking about themselves to you, now all of a sudden this is a psychological thing. Now all of a sudden they like you,
Yeah.
right? Because you're making him feel good about himself. Because everybody likes to talk about themselves, even if they won't admit it, right? So if you get him to talk about himself, psychologically, he's going to connect that good feeling he has with you, right? So now when
Hmm.
it comes time to make a decision about you, he's going to have a good feeling about you. That's one of the ways that because that's something that I was bad at, right? I made them uncomfortable around me. Now I
Yeah.
didn't.
I want to thank you for one of those posts you made in Black Boys Play Baseball. You know me, I didn't play baseball growing up. I didn't have a father that passed the game down to me. It was no one in my neighborhood, inner city Jacksonville, playing. And when you mentioned the Crocs, my son used to always have
Right.
Crocs when we first started playing. I threw them all away, right? I tell him because this is what you put on the post. When you get out the car, you need to be in uniform because you're being judged as soon as you get out the car. We don't have Crocs in my
Right.
house. As soon as he gets out the car, he has to have on his turfs tied up. In between games, you need to have on your turfs. We don't even have Crocs, all because of that post that you
Yeah.
made. Because one of the things we're talking about is we have to assimilate to their game, right? If this is what you want to play, play the game without
Right.
demeaning yourself,
Right.
right?
Right.
Still be who you are, but you have to understand all the different factors that go in external things and play their game. So if it's no Crocs, don't wear the Crocs. If it's no this or that, just don't do it or go do something else. But as long as we are here, we're going to be in this confinement without sacrificing the morals
Yeah.
that
Again,
mom and I
we
have
don't want to give
instilled
them
in you.
an excuse to deny
To
us,
X you
right?
off.
Because that story I told about Chad Kruger,
Hmm.
that's the reason he got Chad's attention because he had his turfs on, tied up, with
Yep.
his shirt tucked in with a belt on and his hat on
Yep.
straight. Everybody else is coming in
Hmm.
with Crocs and shirt untucked and all that kind of stuff. But this kid came in dressed, ready to play, right? And
Right.
that still gets people's attention. It's not a major thing to do, but it carries a lot of weight, right? Because a lot of scouts will go get to the ballpark early. They'll sit in the parking lot and just watch kids go into the ballpark. Right? They watch how they talk to their dads. They watch how they talk to their mothers. They pay attention to all that stuff, right? They watch who's bringing food to the dugout and all that kind of stuff. They pay attention
Yeah.
to all that stuff. Now, again, they may not say anything to you guys, but when they're talking to each other or people that they trust, that's the kind of stuff that they talk about,
Right.
right? So I just tried again. I try to relay that stuff to our kids because it affects us the most, right?
Hmm.
They do it to other kids too, but we get affected the most. Last one hired, first one fired. That still
Yeah.
stands true today, right? Especially with 4% of us in the big leagues right now, whatever it is, right? So again, we just gotta eliminate all the excuses until we get there, and we can start doing what we want to do, maybe,
Okay.
right? But up until that
Man,
point,
Perfect.
listen, man, I'm gonna have to edit this. I'm gonna have to get me some good clips, man, out of this one
Yeah.
right here because man, people need to make it to the end of this episode. Like you just dropped some super serious gems, like right there towards the end, like very specific things that you could do to give
yeah,
yourself a leg
yeah,
up against the
yeah,
competition. I'm just sitting here thinking about it right now. Like, man, this is one of those episodes that I just want to. People. I really hope that people make it to the end of this episode so they can. They need to hear this, especially this last 10 minutes of the conversation, because all those other things, the analytics part, everybody's chasing those, right? But the thing that you're talking about right now is it. Jalen Hurts, he has an it.
Hmm.
Right.
People look at these they're like, oh well, he doesn't throw for as many yards as no, he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to. He's built different. You could see it when he walks into the room. He commands a different level of attention. His demeanor, he demands a certain level of respect just on his posture, on how he presents himself, how he communicates. So there's like this a whole other part of the process in the game outside of analytics and development that matters as well.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's so funny you mentioned that because you mentioned Tamar Johnson earlier. So the other thing besides his hitting that made Tamar different than everybody else is just what you just talked about. When he stepped on the field, he literally was like a coach on the field, right? When he stepped on the field, everybody else perked up, right? He just had that kind of presence, all right. So and to give you a perfect example, I remember watching a game, and it was a high school game or a summer ball game, second and third, 1 out, no outs, whatever it was. He struck out, right? He struck out, didn't get the run in. Now most guys would go into the dugout, throw their helmets, and sit down for an inning and mope, right? But when
Yeah.
he after he struck out, he stood in front of the dugout and was cheering for the next guy to go to get it done,
Fire.
right? As a high school
Right.
player, right? And most players, period, won't do that, right? That makes him a leader. I remember he came and played for me a couple of games in the tournament, and we were a mediocre team at best. But when he came, it was him and one other guy. We turned into studs, right? Because I can remember he was playing shortstop, and our second baseman made an error or something, and he started hanging his head, and Tamar walked over to him and got in his butt, said, "Come on, get your head up. We need you right here." Right?
Right.
Yes, sir.
And so,
Yeah.
and that's natural from him, and that was one of the things that separated him from everybody else. So that's why everybody looked up to him, right? Because he literally was a coach on the field. So,
Yeah.
and then there's another thing too about how to fit in. So as hitters, what's going to happen with your sons, as they get older, they can start playing for whoever. Somebody's always going to be giving hitting advice, trying to change their swing, all that kind of stuff. How do you deal with that? Because and this happens at the pro level too, because it happened with Tamar, it happened with T.J. White, and a couple other guys that I've coached. Right, where the coaches,
The boy from St. Louis, they messed that boy swing all the way up. The boy with St. Louis Cardinals.
which one for the Cardinals?
Uh,
Walker.
yeah,
Oh, Gordon
Walker.
Walker, I can fix him in 15 minutes. But anyway,
Yeah, I've seen you say that
so
too.
what happened? But what happens is you know, minor league coaches especially, they're there for the same reason the players are there. They're trying to get to the big leagues,
Mhm.
right? So if I can attach myself to this stud, right, I got a better shot at going to the big leagues. So I go to this guy. I say, I need you to do this, this, and this with your swing, even though the swing is already good because that's why you got drafted.
You're right.
And most hitting coaches, and I had to learn to undo this, but most hitting coaches will try to get kids to do the things that they used to do when they played, right? And it doesn't work for everybody. It may work for guys here and there. All right. So how do you deal with that as a player, right? You don't want to come off as an a-hole, but at the same time, you know what he's telling you doesn't work, right? And so you're in between a rock and a hard place. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
real simple, especially with college coaches. You,
You, you,
when they're telling you to do stuff and you know it's not right, shake your head yes, and then do what you know you need to do. And then
yeah.
every time you hit a ball hard, you thank him.
Hmm.
That tip really worked. I'm gonna keep working on it, coach. And then they leave you alone because they don't know the difference. Most of the time, they don't know the difference of what you're doing. Right?
Yeah.
All they see is the results. Right? So that's one of the ways you can deal with bad coaching. especially specifically bad hitting coaching. So
Yeah.
you got to teach your kids, and that's the other thing too. Teach your kids to speak up for themselves too. Right? Don't
Yeah.
just you know, especially when you get to college and at the pro level, they're not your superiors. They're your equals. They just have a different position. But
Right.
you know, get them to understand they're equal to everybody. Regardless of
Yeah.
again, you don't have to be disrespectful to anybody, anything like that. But I tell them if you're trying to be a major leaguer, right? So your brand, you're like a brick and mortar. You're a high end brick and mortar business, right? So if
Yeah.
you had a high end brick and mortar business with all these high end products in your store, you wouldn't let somebody bring some crap in your store to try to sell it. You
Right.
tell them to get that stuff out of here. Well, that's how you have to treat the instruction that you're given. Right? You
Yeah.
can't let people bring crappy instruction to your high end store because it's going to ruin. It's going to
Well,
bring down the value of everything else.
All
yeah.
right,
So what
so
you're telling is,
oh, I'm not gonna let you do this.
I got to.
I'm
I
not gonna
got
let
to.
you do this, Jason.
No,
Listen,
no, no, no.
listen, dog, because we got to bring him back on. We got to have a
Okay.
whole
Yeah,
episode.
Yeah.
Postcard, we gonna bring you back on. We gonna have a whole episode dedicated
Yeah.
to this
But
because we
well,
about to go into a
you've
whole
been
nother
giving us a
episode.
lot of tidbits on, almost like soft skills in the corporate
yeah,
world,
oh
right?
yeah,
And that kid, one of the things you was talking about was hitting. When they out there on the battlegrounds, they gotta figure it out. It's not going to be the same for everybody. When you're on that battleground, your battleground is different from this
right.
battleground, so it can't just be cookie cutter. It has to be individualized to you, whether you 5'10" or 6'3". You can't get the same cookie cutter when you out there battling out on those
Yeah,
grounds.
that's the thing.
Yeah, man.
So many of our parents and even the kids, they want to be ranked. They want to be a high profile player. But you have to understand,
Right.
the more popular you are, the tougher it's going to be for you because everybody's going to pitch you
Yeah.
like you're Babe Ruth. Why this guy getting off fastballs and he keeps throwing me curveballs in the dirt?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
because you're who you are.
Yeah.
So you got to.
But before we get you out of here, we're gonna have to bring you back on. Can you tell our viewing audience where everyone can find you? Your YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Can you please tell us how we all can find you?
I need to start. I do need to start posting a little bit more. But my Instagram is CANIC7. I actually have two. CANIC7 is one of my Instagrams, and the other one is Carl Nichols Baseball. And
Okay.
then my YouTube channel is just my name. And then on Facebook, which is
Facebook.
what I'm on the
Yeah.
most, I guess you just
Right.
have to do a search for it with my name, Carl Nichols, because I don't even know what the username is. But I plan on starting posting a lot more. Lately I've been hanging out with my grandkids and the cheer stuff. So, but I do need to start
Okay.
posting some more baseball stuff. So,
Yeah.
so
It's all good, man. We appreciate everything that you do post when you post. It's very educational. It's very it's for especially for daddy ball guys like us. Like we've told you just off a post how you've changed our,
respect.
our perspective on how we approach things. And so I wanted to make sure that we brought you on just so that people can get more of an understanding because it's very hard to understand what
Just kind
somebody
of
is
grab.
saying while you reading
Right, right.
characters. It's a lot
Always,
different when
always
you
turns into a fight.
yeah, and it happens every single time. You know what I'm saying? But we gonna get you back because we really need to talk about what you just was talking about. I can't wait to talk about
Yep,
that one. So we gonna have you back here soon to talk about that because we should be in full-fledged baseball
yep.
season. You know what I'm saying? Baseball season just now started in Atlanta this weekend and never stops in Florida. But it's just not opened up this weekend in Atlanta, which means that Houston's coming up. All the
Yep.
tournament season is about to come up, so it's going to be a good thing to come back and check in with you in a couple months or something like that, and we could really focus in on that specific conversation when it comes down to your approach, when it comes down to the training and being coached up by other
Yep.
professionals and how you should approach
Yeah,
that.
and let me just say, both you guys you're on the right track with your sons. So just keep it going. And then the other advice I would have too is never stop learning. right? Try
Okay.
keep searching for that information to pass on to your son, right? And then make
Yeah.
sure that every few months or whatever, ask him if he's still enjoying the game. You still having
Mm-hmm.
fun. You still like doing what you're doing, right? So that they again continue that love because the older they get, it's going to get tougher. So they got to make sure they got that love in there, right? And then like you said, daddy ball. I experienced daddy ball at the highest level when I played with Cal Ripken and his dad. So, so
Okay.
Fire.
Cal,
That's
Yeah.
he had
fire.
two of his sons in the big leagues, right? And
That's
I learned a
fire.
lot from watching them about daddy ball, right? Because
Right.
on the field, he treated his sons just like they were like the rest of us. Even though you could tell he was super proud of his kids and being able to coach them, right? So there's nothing wrong with wanting to coach your kids. If you have that opportunity, you should do it, right? Because that's something that doesn't happen every day. I wish I had, my kid played baseball and I could coach him, but my son was a
Yeah.
musician. But so just keep up the good work. I'm,
Appreciate you.
I'm 100% supporting.
I
Well, on
appreciate that.
behalf of Coach Rube and myself, Veggie Hope, we would like to thank you for being our first guest on the Daddy Ball podcast. We
Yep.
look forward to having you on again.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to be on again.
All right.
All
Thank you
right.
guys.
Have a
See
great
y'all
evening.
next
All right.
time.